Hi, everyone. It's an honor to share a stage with a man named Freedom, let alone a really big man named Freedom. I wanted to set the stage particularly for those of you who don't follow basketball that closely, so you can have some kind of entree into the controversies that we'll be talking about a little bit here. So next week is the beginning of the National Basketball Association season. The NBA, biggest league in the world, most lucrative. They're starting the season next week. The season that began 2 years ago next week, the 20 to 21 season, during that year, Enes Kanter, as he was named back then, had a pretty good year for a pretty good team. Portland Trail Blazers played all 72 games, started half of them, had what they call a double-double, averaged a double-double, meaning double digits in points and rebounds. Not to get too technical, but a rebound is when you shoot and you miss and someone's got to catch and control the ball. Most rebounds are collected by the defensive team because they're closer to the basket. So getting an offensive rebound is a particularly valuable skill in the NBA and has been valued as such for a very long time. That season, which ended 15 months ago, he had the second most offensive rebounds in the NBA. There's a lot of players who play professional basketball. I mean, did this playing 24 minutes a game in a 48-minute game. Second most offensive rebounds. So my question to you, Mr. Freedom, is what team are you playing for next week?
Good question. First of all, thank you guys for being here, and I'm honored to be here. Really good question. So far, no team has called me, unfortunately. Yep. No team, unfortunately, reached out. I have actually even had a conversation with my agent and stuff, like how come, every year, every off season around July and August, we get a lot of, phone calls from different teams and stuff, but not this summer.
What do they say when your agent calls them?
Well, they actually come up with so many different excuses to say, hey, we don't need it, which I know, which all the basketball experts know that they need a big man who can rebound. But they try to make a lot of excuses and say, hey, we don't need him and stuff. But the next week they go and sign someone who is another big man. And I'm like, I call my manager, I'm like, this is just funny. The whole world should see what's going on.
So what is your explanation for why you can't get a job doing something that you're obviously able to do?
Good question. Well, so I'm just going to start with this. The last 10 years, I started to talk about the problems were happening in Turkey, and I'm going to give them credit because NBA were really, really supportive. Adam Silver, the commissioner, some of the the players that I play with, or some of the the coaches that who coached me was really respectful and really helpful. And just 2 summers ago, I'm gonna give you guys the whole story. 2 summers ago, just last summer, I had a basketball camp in New York. It was a free basketball camp. The kids came. We had an amazing time. And after the basketball camp, all the kids lined up, and they were taking pictures one by one. And I remember I take a picture with this kid, and his parents called me out in front of everybody. It was like the kids were there, the parents were there, the media, everybody, and said, how can you call yourself a human rights activist when your Muslim brothers and sisters are getting tortured and raped every day in concentration camps in China? And I was like, oh my God. And I'm still smiling for the camera, for his kid, and I turned around, I was like, I promise I'm going to get back to you. So then I went back to my hotel, I canceled everything that day, and I started to study about what's going on. And the more I studied, and the more I was ashamed with myself. I was like, I cannot believe the last 10 years I only focused on one dictatorship. So I promised myself that I was like, whatever it takes, I'm just going to talk about these problems. And then after that, the more I study about not just the Uyghurs, but Uyghurs, Hong Kongers, Tibetans, and Mongolians and Taiwanese people, and innocent Chinese people too, and getting tortured and raped and abused by the Chinese government, I was like, enough is enough, because I was seeing the hypocrisy of the NBA. I was like, wow, they talk about all the problems that are happening around the world, in America and anywhere else, but when it comes to one specific country, China, they were silent. And I did actually a lot of research about how not just NBA or sports world, but you look at Hollywood, you look at Wall Street, academias, big tech, Congress, and local congresses, how they were talk about all the problems were happening in the world, but when it comes to China, they were silent. I was like, someone has to open that door.
So what had happened a couple of years before that is that the Houston Rockets had been they playing in China or at the time, and which the NBA has been playing exhibition games there for a long time. It's a huge business there, and the then general manager, I believe it was Daryl Morey, came out and said, I think in response to a question, that you could go ahead and correct my.
Because I had a really funny story about that. So 2 years ago, one of the general manager of Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, tweeted something very simple and said, "Free Hong Kong." It became a huge mess for the NBA, huge mess. You know, NBA lost millions of dollars, and I remember I was like, I never heard about. I mean, obviously I went to Hong Kong, but I didn't know what was going on there, and so I started to research. Right, this was 2 years ago. So this was around 2.5 years ago. And I started to research. I was like, this is incredible. Someone has to talk about this. So the Celtics, I was playing for Celtics back then too, made me media unavailable for 2 weeks straight because they knew I don't care about their business. I will go out there and say something. So later on, right? Later on, 2 weeks later, 2 years later, I started to talk about these problems. Not many people know, but he texted me. He reached out.
Oh.
Yeah, he reached out. Not many people know that, but he reached out. And you know what he said? He said, listen, they made me took my tweet down. They made me apologize. They made me said all kind of things, but you don't apologize. You don't take your tweet down. You keep doing what you're doing because this fight has to be given. You know what I mean? This fight has to be given. So after he said that, I was like, oh my God. So I started to do more research. I found out NBA put 2 statements out there. One was for the world, was saying this was for Daryl Morey, we care about our employee freedom of speech and blah, blah, blah. One was for the Chinese government, was saying that he was just not educated enough. He didn't know enough about it. You know, we just want to say sorry for our Chinese fans. And I was like, this is unbelievable.
Around that time, LeBron James, who's the largest star in the game by far and a billionaire, as far as I know. Wow, we're in
Good job. I like that.
We're in Miami.
Yes.
In front.
And we are in Miami, guys.
So I get it. There's a lot there. Those are people who just don't like male pattern baldness. I get that too. It's fine. Anyways, he was asked about this because he's a very politically active person. The Miami bubble, right, during the pandemic, when all of the teams played under a tent down the block, I guess, I don't know, I wasn't here, was in the same summer as the George Floyd protests, and so players were encouraged to wear slogans on their backs and on their shoes and other things, and the NBA became very self-conscious as a kind of a political organization. And LeBron James, when he was asked about this, like, is there some kind of contradiction in your support for human rights and what's going on in China, his answer, and this is a paraphrase, is I don't know much about China, and I'm going to focus on the United States, and people shouldn't talk about stuff that they're ignorant of. What's your opinion about LeBron James?
Listen, I think on the court, I got a lot of respect for him, you know, because he's a great player. You love him or you hate him. I mean, he's a great player. He's not the GOAT, by the way. I don't know if anyone thinks that he's the GOAT. He's not the GOAT.
That's right.
But no, I mean, so, I mean, when, like you said, you know, when I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when all the protests were happening, NBA and obviously LeBron James and a couple of the players was the first players and organization went out there and say, you know, this is bigger than basketball, social justice, we have to stand up for what we believe in and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, this is beautiful. I mean, there is a freedom of protest in this country. There's a freedom of speech. You can, you know, say whatever you want and stuff. And I was like, NBA was like, did it so much. They put all the BLM logos on the floor and all the phrases behind our jersey, which was controlled by the NBA. There was only 20 of them. We couldn't pick what we wanted to pick. So if we wanted to go out there and poke like free, you know, Tibet or free Hong Kong, you're not allowed to do that.
Did you wear your Erdogan sucks?
Nah, I did not. No, I put freedom. I was like, I didn't want it to make too controversial for the NBA, but so I was like, this is beautiful. I was like kneeling and everything, but then, later on, 2 years later, this happened, and I was like, I tried to reach out to. It was the perfect moment this year because it was right before the Beijing Olympics. So when these things were happening, I tried to reach out to every athlete in NBA, and not just in NBA, WNBA, MLS, MLB, NHL. I literally try to reach out to every.
How? I mean, you're like DMing them?
Yeah, DMing them on social media and stuff, and not one of them. Most of them said, "Listen, keep doing what you're doing. I think what you're doing is so amazing." But when I said, "Hey, like let's do something. Let's do a campaign, or let's put this," they said, "Listen, man." Even my teammates, they were like, "Listen, I think what you're doing is so amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, but we just cannot support you out loud." I asked them why, and they said, "Well, we have shoe deals, endorsement deals, jersey sales. We want to get another contract." I asked them one simple question. I was like, put your family self in their shoes. If your mother, if your sister, or if your daughter was getting tortured and raped every day, would you still stay silent? Would you still pick money and business over your morals, values, and principles? They usually turn around and go back. And that was the hypocrisy. That was the hypocrisy that was killing me. Listen, I have nothing against LeBron James, whatever, you know what I mean? The reason I call out LeBron James, he's not the only one. You see, there are so many Nike athletes out there, and wanted to become this like more than an athlete, wants to advocate for social justice and stuff. But you cannot be a human rights activist and sign with a company who uses slave labor. You know what I mean? It's like, I try to tell them, even my teammates, I'm like, listen, before you put your signature on a paper and sign these multi-million whatever contracts with these companies or endorsement, do some little research. Look at Nike. I keep talking about Nike because it is the biggest sponsor of the NBA. In America, Nike supports Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ community, no Asian hate, Latino community. It's beautiful. But when it comes to China, nothing. Nothing. Because they know that the money that they could lose, But so that is the reason that, and even one of the athletes just said it recently. Nike gave LeBron James $1 billion lifetime to just shut up about what's happening in China.
So what happened with the Houston Rockets, which is a team that has the closest historical relationship with China because of Yao Ming, the beloved Hall of Fame center. So I think Houston was taken off TV. They lost a lot of business because of what Daryl Morey tweeted and then apologized for in kind of a ransom note sort of situation. So take us now to this time last year, playing for the Celtics. You're just coming off a really good year with the Blazers. You decide, after being shamed by a New York kid, because New York kids can't shut up, apparently, you decide to look into this and speak out about it. What's your decision-making process? Who designs all those shoes? What happens next?
So today is October 15th, right? So October 18th is the first game of the regular season. And it's been almost 1 year that, So I remember after I decided to talk about the problems that were happening in China, because on the internet you can find all kind of news. You don't know which one to trust or not. So I reached out to my manager. I was like, "Hey, can you find me a concentration camp survivor?" And he did. And I sit down and had a conversation with this lady, and she was telling me about. I mean, I don't want to go into too much details right now because I'm sure so many kids will be watching this. But she was telling me about, all the tortures and gang rapes and all the forced sterilization and abortion and organ harvesting and all that stuff. And I was like, I cannot believe it. And the more she talked, the more I was ashamed with myself. I was like, I cannot believe I was quiet about this. So end of our conversation with her, I was like, what can I do to help? What can I do for you? She said, nothing. I was like, what do you mean? So we had a 1-hour conversation for no reason. She's like, no, I'm in America. I'm good. I can eat whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. I have my freedom here. Help those 2-3 million, Muslims who are getting tortured and raped every day. Help those people. At that moment, I'm like, I don't care how much money that they offer me. I'm just going to do what I'm doing. But I wanted to do it in a very unique way. I mean, you ask every kid loves shoes. You know what I mean? I remember when I was a kid, when I was watching an NBA game, the first thing I was watching was the shoes. And the next day I was waking up and telling my dad, please buy those shoes for me, you know? I mean, no one can hate the shoes. So we come up with this idea. I was like, listen, we are going to reach out to all these dictatorships out there and artists. And we're going to ask him or her to just put all the struggles, everything on our shoes. And we're just going to go out there and play in them. So we did it. You know, my first topic was Free Tibet. And, you know, on social media, since I was a little kid, I was following, you know, His Holiness Dalai Lama, and I think his message is beautiful and stuff. As a Muslim, I love his message. So my first topic was Free Tibet. We come up with an amazing design. And I looked at the rule book. There's nothing against it. Because 2 years ago, everybody was putting like, you know, BLM or I can, you know, breathe and all that stuff. And it was beautiful. So I put the shoes on. I went out there, right? And I'm warming up. And I see that all my teammates are looking at my shoes. They just don't know, like, what's going on the shoes. Because there's so many, like, I don't know if you guys know the Tibetan flag, but there's so much. So it's so colorful. So right before the game, we sang the national anthem. We are in a team huddle, and right before the team, it was 1 minute left before the game starts. There's two gentlemen came from the NBA, was working for Boston Celtics, and said, "Listen, please take your shoes off." And I was really confused. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Your shoes has been getting so much attention internationally. It was from China. China made a call, and the game didn't even started yet. It's the warm-ups. Think about it." He said, "You have to take your shoes off." And I was really confused. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, you have to take your shoes off." So it was the perfect moment because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test. So I closed my eyes. I'm like, okay, we have 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech. Seriously, this is like, while they're talking, this is what I'm thinking. And I was like, no, I'm not taking my shoes off. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, go tell your boss. I don't care if I get fined. And they said, we're not talking about a fine. We're talking about getting banned. So they threatened me to get banned just because of the shoes that I was wearing. So I didn't take him off. That half, I played 0 minutes, which I played every game before that. I went back to my locker room. I picked up my phone. There was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the one that my manager sent me. He said, every Celtics game is banned in China rest of the year. It took them 24 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 24 minutes to ban every Celtics game in television rest of the year. And so that game I played 0 minutes. After the game, one of my teammates reached out to me in the locker room and said, listen, you know this is your last year in the league, right? You're not going to get another contract after this. Enjoy it. I hope you win a championship, but you're not going to get another contract because if you criticize Nike, if you talk about China, you're out of this league. And I was shocked. And after that, NBA called me after the game. I was like, what did I do wrong? He's like, you cannot wear those shoes ever again. They harassed me so much. They were calling me once every hour. They harassed me so much. At the end of our conversation, I said, okay, I promise, this Free Tibet shoes, gone. I'm not going to wear them ever again. They said, promise? I said, promise. We hang up the phone. So the next day, we have a home opener. I wore Free Uyghur shoes. So,
what? You're in a locker room. The NBA, these locker rooms are small. The guys are big, but it's not that many people. What are they saying to you? And specifically, what is your coach saying to you? You've gone from being a rotation player, second in the league in offensive rebounds, and suddenly the Boston Celtics don't need an offensive rebounder. What was his explanation to you?
Good question. They did not give me no explanation.
What would happen when you asked? Or like
they give me, we had a conversation with the coach. And he's like, yeah, listen, we're trying to do some new things. We're trying to play some new young guys. It's early of the season. I promise you, out of respect, because I have a lot of respect for people. I just sit there and just listen, but I did not really hear what he was saying because I know what was the deal. Because So right after that second game, I had a conversation with Adam Silver, the commissioner. He even admitted, it's on the internet, you guys can watch it if you want. He even admitted that, he's like, listen, at the end of the day, we are a business, and we have a business to run. And even one of the owners said that, you talk about China, you'll be out of this league. I think the one thing that hurt me the most, NBPA, the Player Association, which I give thousands of dollars every month to protect my rights against the NBA, was the one pressuring me and saying, don't wear those shoes ever again.
So union officials
Yep.
reached out to you and said, don't do this, because China is a source of money, and their contract is about how do we divide up the money.
Yeah. So, and then right after that, things got even worse. And I remember I think as we came to Miami, actually, we're going to play against the Heat. I sit down and had a conversation with someone from the State Department. And he's like, listen, I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen the next 6 months. I was like, okay, I'm listening. He said, for the next, so you talked about China, and it's all over the world right now. So for the next 6 months, the first thing, you're going to get a text message, DMs, calls, someone's going to reach out from one of the most beautiful girls in the world. I was like, what are you talking about?
It's a day that ends in Y. Why would it should be any different?
No, I was very shocked. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yes, do not answer any of them. These are Chinese spies. We'll try to get you in any way possible. It got my head, it's like in my head so much. Now, every time a girl like says hi to me, whatever, I turn around and go away. I promise you. And trust me, a lot of them reached out. I just don't know who to trust anymore. It became like, I became so like paranoid right now. Like every person, like every girl who texts me on Instagram or reaches out on my phone, I just don't know if they are a spy or not. And I was just like very shocked, which it had actually happened. So the last 6 months, I've been getting from, I promise you, if this conversation wasn't on the table, I will marry some of those girls. I promise you, I'm not joking. But like, it was the craziest thing, but, and it's still coming.
So when I came here and was talking to someone yesterday, and they heard that I was going to be talking to you, and they're noddingly familiar with it, said, well, okay, sure, he criticizes China. But, it comes from Turkey. Is he really criticizing Turkey that much? So why don't you share with the class what your relationship has been with Mr. Erdogan, including back when you were not a United States citizen,
right,
and your passport situation was a little bit different.
So all my activism, so my first 2 years, I played 11 years in the league. My first 2 years, all I cared about was playing basketball and having fun with my teammates. The first time coming into the league, that's all I cared about. And then my third year, I remember there was a corruption scandal happened in Turkey. President Erdogan and his family was involved in it. And this is all over the internet. You guys can go ahead and follow it up. But so after that, people, caught him. And I remember the first thing that he's done, he was going out there and put on innocent people in jail who caught him, like police, persecutors, innocent people. And whichever media outlet that talks about that corruption scandal, he was going there and shutting down all the media outlets. I'm talking about magazines or newspapers and channels and stuff. So I was like, if you're fighting against a free media, I'm going to say something about it. So as an NBA player, I was not educated enough about the situation. I said something about it, Because of the NBA platform, it became a conversation in the United States and Turkey. And I was like, even one single tweet can affect this much. From now on, I'm going to start to pay attention about what's going on in my country more. And after that, I remember I started to study. I remember all my teammates were going out, hanging out in bars and stuff. I was going back to my apartment and started to study about what's going on. Not just Turkey, but Middle East, the relationship between America and Turkey, and all that stuff. So the more I studied, the more big platforms started to give me this huge interviews and op-eds and all that stuff. And every time I say something, because of the platform, it was becoming a really big conversation, and Turkey hated that. I remember, the things that I talk about affected me and also my family. I remember my dad was a scientist. He got fired from his job. My sister went to medical school for 6 years. She still cannot find a job. I think the saddest one was my little brother, because he was playing basketball and he wanted to be like his big brother playing NBA, but he was getting kicked out in every team. And I remember that he was asking me like, hey, I'm the tallest one in my team. I'm the best player in my team. Why are they keep getting me, why am I keep getting kicked out? I couldn't explain him. He was too young. So they were getting affected so much, they had to put a statement out there and saying we are disowning Enes. And I remember going to a practice that day was definitely one of the toughest days in my life. And after that, Turkish government didn't believe that. They sent police to my house in Turkey and they raided the whole house and they took every electronics away. Phones, computers, laptops, iPads, because they wanted to see if I am still in contact with my family or not. They couldn't find no evidence because I wasn't, but they still took my dad in jail for a while. We put so much pressure from here to Turkey, they had to let him go. And then after that, they canceled my passport and they actually put my name on Interpol list. So till this day, I still consider as an international criminal. There are only 26 countries in the world that I can only travel to right now. 26, And right now that it's been going on, and now I have a 11 arrest warrant for me by President Erdogan.
I mean, do you use this as like a bragging thing in the locker room? Like, you guys think you're bad.
No, it's actually so weird because so every year there's like a new arrest warrant comes out, and I just laugh at them because I don't really care about what they put out there. But when I walk in the locker room, all my teammates are like, "Oh my God, I just got an arrest warrant for 4 years." Like, so they looked at me. It's like they were always looking at me as like this, like, how am I gonna say? They wanted to ask, but then like they were like, just because of my family was involved, it was a little personal. They were just a little shy to ask. And then after I spent a couple of months with them, and they started to ask, like, "Hey man," it's like, "We've been seeing on the news that you are, they want to arrest you, they want to kill you, they want to do this and that and stuff." I think the craziest one, I don't know how that got out, how they leaked out. So it got to a point there was so many death threats. I sit down with FBI, and I was actually in Portland, had a big conversation, and some of the agents said you cannot stay in an apartment or a house. You have to move to a hotel because it's more secure. And while I was in a road game, so I moved to a hotel, and while I was in a road game, the FBI came to my hotel room, and they set up this thing called panic button. And they said, whenever you feel uncomfortable, push that button, we'll be there in 2-3 minutes. I always wanted to try it and time them and see if they're really gonna be there in 2-3 minutes. But I mean, it's very difficult because the things that I wanna like, I wish I can sit down and start talking like some of these, Turkish people. I'm like, I don't talk about politics. I don't really care about politics. I have never my whole life, even with Turkey, even with any country that I talk about, I have never said, vote for this party, vote for this people, vote for this. I don't care about that. What I care about is human rights, because I don't care if you're from the right, from the left, from up, down, whoever you are. You have to care about human rights, So after I got fired or banned, whatever you call it, from the NBA in February, I went to DC. I sit down with both parties. I remember it was like a 20 to 25 Republican senators, and then there was like a couple of days later, I sit down, had a conversation with same with Democrats. I'm like, listen, what do I do now? Should I get into politics? Every single of them said, absolutely not. Absolutely, do not get into politics, because they said you have a pure message in your hand. Go in the middle, because like you said, I mean, the only thing that is going to bring two parties together is human rights and freedom. I don't care which party you're in, you have to care about human rights. So, right now, they really don't want me to get into politics.
The New York Times criticized you in a long feature a few months back, saying that you went on Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, I think it was, and criticizing LeBron James, and so you became an unwitting or witting tool of conservatives in the right wing to bash LeBron James for his civil rights activism. Mm-hmm. What is your response to that critique? So my thing is, whenever I attend the shows, I even tell my teammates, we had a conversation. I was like, listen, whenever I attend these shows, that doesn't mean I agree with what they're saying. But just because their outreach is so big, you know what I mean? I go on Fox, next day I go on CNN, next day I go on MSNBC, next day I go on this and that, Whenever I sit down, I don't really talk about politics. I never said, okay, well,
I never go into any of the, the right-wing, media and say, oh yeah, I hate the Democrats, or same thing with the left-wing media. So like, whenever I go down, I talk about politics. I talk about human rights. I stay out of politics, because it is important to reach out to every corner in America and spread this beautiful message. You know what I mean? So that's why I was attending these shows, and I was like, actually checking with my teammates. I'm like, listen, tomorrow, I remember sitting down with like 3 or 4, 5 of them. I'm like, listen, I have a show tomorrow with Tucker Carlson, with Laura Ingraham. What do you think I should do? They said, listen, if you're only gonna talk about human rights, if you're only gonna talk about freedom, do it. But after that, make sure you do something on the left, like CNN or talk on New York Times or whoever. You know what I mean? So just try to balance it out. So whenever I attend these shows, that doesn't mean I agree with what they're saying. I stick with my message, and I try to reach out to every corner in America, because it is important. Because if you live in this country, human being is human being. I don't really see colors or parties, this and that. I see human beings, and they need to hear about what's going on.
So if you're not working, compared to working, it's millions of dollars at stake.
Yeah.
Families, hassle, they disowned you.
Out of money.
There's a lot of trouble that has come with this. Do you ever say, you know what, maybe let's just dial this back a little bit for a while?
I had a conversation, actually, so after I get fired, fired in the NBA from, I think it was like February 8th. And that was my last game against Brooklyn Nets, and we killed them. So I remember sitting down having a conversation with my agent. I was like, I'm just going to ask you one simple question. If you don't play basketball ever again, how much money do you think we have lost? He said around $48 to $50 million. And I was like, okay, cool. I promise that didn't hurt at all, because I know what I was doing is bigger than even, forget about 50, forget about 100, because I remember the pain inside of my friend's eyes, the concentration camp survivor. I don't care how much money, like LeBron is a billionaire. Some of the players signing this $200 and $300 million for 5-6 years. And I'm like, and they're just like 25, 26 years old kids. And I was like, how much money you can make? You know what I mean? I'm not telling them not to make any money, but like, if my mother was getting tortured and raped every day, if my sister was getting tortured and raped every day, and if I had to pick, I would pick my morals and values and principles over money and business every day. But I have no regrets. I have zero regrets. If I had to do it all over again, I would do it even stronger. But the only thing that breaks my heart, I wish one, I don't care about an MBA or not, one athlete joined me. That was my ultimate goal. I was praying to God every day. I was like, please just give me one player, one athlete, whoever, it doesn't matter what sport that he plays. Just give me one player that can join me so we can create this movement and start to talk about what's going on, Because now I started to go to these big events, right? I hear about the pain in Tibetans and Hong Kongers and Taiwanese people and Mongolians and Uyghurs people. Get out of China. I'm talking about Cubans and Venezuelans and Nicaraguans and Turkey and Iran and North Korea and Ukraine and Russia. So I can just go on and on. I was like, God gave us this amazing platform to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And the amazing thing is, if you're an athlete, you're like a teacher. There are millions of kids out there are idolizing you and follow your footsteps. Now with all the social media and this and that, everything that you do is going to be out there. And so you can educate them. So if you want to have a better and brighter future, we have to educate our kids so they can make a better choices for our country. So that was the one thing that was breaking my heart the most. Unfortunately, not one of them. I even tried to reach out to Olympians because it was right before the Beijing Olympics. Nothing.
To underline the idea of giving up, $45-50 million. If you go to Basketball Reference, great company, Sports Reference. Plug for them at any time. At the top of every player's page, they will have projections for this coming year. because if they haven't officially retired, we can assume that a healthy 30-year-old man with his track record is going to do X, Y, and Z. The projections clearly on the tape, which frankly is exaggerated given playing time considerations, however, is that he would average 14.6 rebounds a game. That's not the numbers of a retired person, last time I looked, and that's something that would be valued a lot by people. Are you going to play in another country?
So I was actually, this is so crazy because I was like, okay, no NBA, forget about the NBA. So what about Europe? Because Europe is like the second biggest the league after NBA. So I was actually talking to this team, Panathinaikos. It's in Greece. I love Greece. As a Turk, it's a little weird, but I love Greece. So I was talking to this team, Panathinaikos. It is the biggest team in Greece and stuff. So I was like, hey, like, let's do it. So the first week, they were so excited. They were like, oh my God, we cannot believe it. An NBA player coming to our country and coming to our team and play. So the second week, they said, sorry, we cannot do it. Wow. And I was very confused. I'm like, what are you talking about? So my manager did some research. The EuroLeague is sponsored by Turkish Airlines. And it's really close to, Greece is really close to Turkey. So they couldn't really promise us that we are going to be okay. So that is not going to happen. But other than that, I'm like, right now, no Europe, no NBA, no China.
China has a league, yeah.
I actually wanted to go to, it's going to sound crazy. Do you guys know Yao Ming? Yeah, he's one of the best Chinese player that ever played the game. So he invited me to China. He was doing a panel, he was doing an event, and one of the kids asked him a question, like, this has happened in China. He's like, hey, Mr. Ming, so Enes Freedom was talking about, China's this and that. What would you like to say to him? He said, I understand that so many people have so many different opinions about China, but I want to invite him so I can show him around. The next day I was on CNN. I was like, okay, I'm coming. I promise you, and I swear to you, I was gonna go. But I told him one simple message. I was like, listen, I'm gonna come and you can do all kind of propaganda, whatever you wanna show me that you want. But then after that, I wanna take you to concentration camps. I wanna take you to Hong Kong. I wanna take you to Tibet. I wanna take you to, and then after that, we're done with China, then we go to Taiwan, because they're two different countries. Then we go to Taiwan.
This sounds like the best buddy comedy I've heard of in a long time.
And I promise you, I still have the video on my Instagram you guys can watch. You know what he did? He blocked me on Instagram like a little kid. I swear to you. He blocked me on Instagram like a little kid. And I have like the screen recording on my phone. I can show it to you after if you want, but it's just, that's obviously like helps me. That shows that how much of the hypocrisy that all these people are just spreading and lying. But it is what it is, man.
Last minute or so that we have here, you became an American citizen. We still rock. We still get people like him. In 2021, you chose that moment to change your name to Freedom. This is an international crowd, but speak a little bit to our native-born Americans here. Why would someone be so cringe to change their name to Freedom when they are getting their citizenship?
Another funny story. So I came here when I was 17 years old. I went to high school in Los Angeles. I remember I had my first practice, and then after that, me and my teammates went to locker room. And after the practice, everybody's tired, so everybody's just sitting down and hanging out in their phone and stuff. So I saw this one of my teammates put a post out there on Facebook, and he was criticizing the president of the United States. I immediately turned around. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he was very shocked. He's like, what happened? What's up? He's like, I just saw your post. And he said, okay. And I was like, well, you might be in jail tomorrow. So he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, is it like, I was like, if you criticize the president, don't you go to jail tomorrow? And all my teammates started to laugh. And one of them said, dude, this is not Turkey, this is America. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, expression, and protest, and you can, just because of what you're saying, what you say on internet is not gonna lead you to jail. I had really bad, I remember my manager's wife's dad is Turkish, and he liked one of my posts on Twitter, and he was in jail for 13 days. And that's actually out there. It sounds like I'm lying, but if you guys don't believe me, it's out there. Anyway, so I was just very confused about what he was saying. I felt like he was talking to like a different language when he was telling me about all these freedoms that we have here. And throughout the year, my teammates were always like, teaching me about what America is about and all that stuff. And then I was like, this is a beautiful message. This is the most beautiful message that you can give it to all the young generation out there. Freedom, So I was like, I wanted to, change my name and put that name behind my, jersey, and just wherever I go, every arena that I play for, and just spread that message to everywhere. And it became so amazing. Now every arena I go to, people were chanting freedom and stuff. But after I got fired from the NBA, I started to ask myself, are we really free in this country? That was the one thing that made me like, okay, we always everyone loves freedom. I don't care which party you're from, and we always, brag about the freedom we have in America. But then I started to ask myself, I'm like, how can a Chinese dictatorship can control a 100% American-made company? How can a Chinese dictatorship can fire an American, newly become an American citizen from an American company? And after that, I was like, started to hear about other stories about Hollywood. So many actors don't want to put it out there because they want to have another job. You know what I mean? And I don't want to expose their name here, but those are some of like the really, really big actors and stuff. And then I was seeing about the big techs and academias and Congress and local congresses. And I started to ask myself, are we really free in this country? And that's something that we should think about.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Enes Freedom.